Let's go live to one of the key figures at the news conference. The Nationals leader David Littleproud joins us. David Littleproud, thanks for your time. In simple terms, if we go to an analogy, playing poker, you've gone all in on this hand, haven't you? This is a massive promise and commitment to the Australian people.
Well, it's a better way, it's a cheaper way, and it's a more reliable way for our country to move forward against an all-renewables approach that Labor's taking us down. And I think the lived experience of Australians today is that the all-renewables approach is costing them more and is less reliable. You're seeing that when you've got premiers out asking people to turn off dishwashers. Something's not right in a resource-rich country like this. So this is about making sure we don't put all our eggs in one basket with respect to energy, that we spread that mix and we draw on the sovereignty of all our resources to make sure we leave a legacy. And a legacy for regional Australia that's different to one that's just littered with transmission lines, solar panels and wind turbines. We've got a better future than that, and this is why we've taken a sensible approach. I mean, if you go down this path, there'll be 3 million acres of arable land that'll be taken up under this all renewables approach. And while many in the city mightn't understand that, that actually tears up not only native vegetation, that actually tears up your food security and pushes up your food price. So this will be the biggest capital investment in regional Australia in our nation's history. And we're going to back Australia. We're going to back Australians to do this better than anyone else in the world. And I'm proud to be a part of a coalition team that's going to leave that legacy and have a vision for our country that's different to the one that this path of Anthony Albanese is taking us down.
But you're right, that is the ambition you've set. It's a huge ask from a standing start, isn't it, to get to 38% of the energy grid by 2050 to be nuclear. We'd be, by that time, ranked eighth in the world in terms of nuclear supply. And that's from a standing start in 2024.
Yeah, why wouldn't we? You don't think Australians can do it? I do. I back the Australian people. When we give a clear direction as a government that has courage, that has leadership, and strength of that leadership, of setting this country on a course that continues to preserve our way of life, our standard of living, then I back Australians to get the job done. Anthony Albanese doesn't, but I do. I can tell you, we'll do this and we'll do it better than anyone else in the world. They just need leadership. This country needs leadership, strong leadership, and not one where the ideology isn't meeting the practical reality, what's being bled out of people's wallets, and the lived experience about being asked to turn your electricity off to save the grid. That's an embarrassing situation. And now it's time for strong leadership, and that's what the coalition is going to give.
One of the key discrepancies, I guess, just having gone through the report pretty quickly and looking at these numbers versus the GenCost, CSIRO and AEMO analysis, one of the arguments that's made is because nuclear lasts longer, the facilities, the assets have a longer lifespan, it reduces the cost. But the CSIRO analysis suggests that you still have to have major refurbishment on these nuclear plants to enable them to last as long as what you're suggesting. So there are still significant costs inherent in that. Are we being sold a pup with the modelling that you've released?
No, and if you look at the Frontier report, it actually amortises these plants not over 60, 80 plus years. It actually amortises it over 50 years. So they've been very conservative in the modelling in which they've undertaken to factor in those costs. But just appreciate a wind turbine and solar panel might last 15 to 20 years. You're going to do that 4 times. And just think about this, with the 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines to plug all these panels and turbines in, and in 20 years' time, the landholder, the farmer goes, you know what, I've had a gutful of these being on my land. I'm not going to allow them to be rebuilt. We're going to have 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines to nowhere. I mean, the reality is we need to reuse, and the cheapest option is to continue to reuse the existing transmission lines. That's why there's a significant difference between our plan and Labor's plan, is we don't need to build a whole lot of new transmission lines, and we don't need a whole lot extra of generation power through panels and turbines because they can't produce as much. So you're going to have three times more in some cases. You look at Tomago, it has 950 megawatts of power usage every year. To do the same with renewables, you need 3 gigawatts. So you need a whole lot of more solar panels and wind turbines out there. And so all bully for people in the city that think, yeah, let's do it. But just think about regional Australia. Just think about what's going to be littered across the Hunter with transmission lines and solar panels and wind turbines to keep Tomago open. We're all trying to achieve the same thing. We're not against the ideology of those in teal seats. We want to have a clean environment too, but we're just saying there's a better way, there's a cheaper way, and there's a more reliable way to achieve it.
And now it's going to fundamentally come down to this case between what you and Frontier Economics are saying and what the government and the CSIRO have advocated. Now, the CSIRO, I want to read you this statement because they put this out last night on the eve of this nuclear costing. They say that we do not advocate, defend or debate the merits of government or opposition policies. To assert otherwise requires compelling evidence. The CSIRO can be trusted to deliver independent, non-partisan, high-quality research to help solve the challenges facing Australia. You said in recent days to Laura Jays, I think CSIRO have been set up to do the government's dirty work. Do you regret saying that?
No, what I was getting at is that they were given the information to make assumptions, bold assumptions, that they didn't have any knowledge of. Today, we've actually announced what our grid will look like. They didn't have an understanding of that. How many kilowatts, how many megawatts of nuclear energy we're going to have into the grid. They were making assumptions predicated on what was being fed to them. So they were being unfairly treated, is what I was saying, by Chris Bowen and this government. You can only model on assumptions on the information you're given. We hadn't given that information. You got that information today, and they were forced to make assumptions predicated on what our total grid would look like, also on what the capacity of those plants would be running at, which now will show that they will be our 24/7 power that keep the lights on. So they had it generating at a lot lower percentage of what we're showing in this plan. So today, and let me just say, Frontier Economics are just as eminently qualified, in fact, more eminently qualified than probably anyone else in this country to give advice around energy and particularly nuclear. And that in fact, so much so that Chris Bowen himself has used them in seeking advice and getting reports on our energy grid. So too has the South Australian Premier. So we've used someone eminently qualified to make sure that they can run the ruler over these numbers with the plan that we have, with all the information. So I don't pass aspersions on CSIRO. I pass aspersions on the fact that you've got a government that's giving them information that limits their capacity to make proper assessments.
It's a big day. It's a huge day with these numbers out there in the context of the election. Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us, Nationals leader David Littleproud.
Thanks for having me, mate.